Have you ever noticed that some of the kindest people you've ever met are also some of the most tired people, the ones who always show up, who always smile, who always say yes when you ask for help? But if you look closely enough, if you really pay attention, you can see the exhaustion in their eyes. This pattern isn't new. History is filled with figures whose boundless kindness ultimately consumed them. Take Florence Nightingale, the founder of modern nursing. While we celebrate her compassion, few know that her relentless dedication left her bedridden for much of her later life, suffering from what historians now believe was severe burnout and chronic fatigue. She gave everything to others until there was nothing left for herself. We often imagine kindness as this pure, uncomplicated good. We tell children to be kind. We admire kindness in leaders. We measure our own humanity by how much compassion we can extend. But kindness, like everything else in this complicated world, has a shadow. And when you ignore that shadow, when you pretend it doesn't exist, kindness itself can turn into something destructive.
The pattern begins. It starts small. A child learns that being kind, being agreeable, earns them love. When they put their own needs aside to make others comfortable, they are rewarded with smiles, praise, maybe even affection they didn't receive otherwise. Over time, this association buries itself deep inside their nervous system. Kindness becomes survival. In Victorian England, this was codified into an entire social system. Women especially were taught that self-sacrifice was their highest calling. Queen Victoria herself promoted this ideal, yet her own daughter, Princess Alice, worked herself to death caring for others during a diphtheria outbreak. She was just 35 years old, the angel in the house ideal. The perfectly self-sacrificing woman wasn't just a cultural preference. It was a death sentence dressed up as virtue. The older they get, the harder it becomes to separate who they are from what others expect them to be. They become the reliable one, the good person, the friend who never complains. But here's the truth. When kindness is forced, when it is driven by fear of rejection or a desperate need to be valued, it's no longer pure kindness. It becomes a mask. And masks, when worn too long, start to suffocate the person beneath them. The cost of endless giving. Think about the people in your life who are endlessly kind. They'll listen to your problems for hours. They'll help you move. They'll lend money they don't have. They'll sacrifice their own rest just to make sure you're okay. History gives us Mother Teresa as the ultimate symbol of selfless kindness. But what most people don't know is what she revealed in her private letters, published after her death. For nearly 50 years, she experienced what she called darkness, a profound spiritual emptiness and depression. In her own words, she felt unwanted, unloved, and endured terrible pain of loss. The woman the world saw as radiantly kind was, in private, deeply suffering from the weight of her own compassion. At first, such dedication feels admirable, even saintly. But if you've ever been that person, if you've lived that role, you know the truth. Behind every act of self-sacrifice is a quiet resentment, a voice that whispers, "What about me?" But that voice is often silenced, because kindness, especially chronic kindness, comes with an unspoken rule. You're not allowed to put yourself first. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon, and it has a name: compassion fatigue. It describes what happens when someone gives so much of their empathy, so much of their care, that they eventually run dry. Healthcare workers experience it, teachers experience it, even parents experience it. But it's not only about professions. Everyday people, those who identify as kind souls, are at risk too. Studies show that people who consistently prioritize others over themselves report higher levels of anxiety, depression, and even physical health problems compared to those who maintain balance. Kindness, when unchecked, becomes self-erasure, and that's the dark side. Kindness as a weapon. Kindness without boundaries is not kindness at all. It becomes a subtle form of self-destruction. It's like watering every plant in the garden except your own roots. Eventually the gardener collapses and the entire garden withers with them. But here's the more unsettling part. Sometimes kindness itself becomes a weapon. Consider Mahatma Gandhi, revered worldwide for his philosophy of non-violence and compassion. Yet his own family paid the price. His son Harilal lived a troubled life, struggling with alcoholism and feeling abandoned by a father who gave everything to India but little to his own children. Gandhi himself admitted late in life that he had failed his family in his quest to serve humanity. When you are known as the kind one, people start to expect it. They rely on it. They shape their behavior around it. And without even realizing it, your kindness teaches others that your needs are secondary, that your feelings are negotiable. Over time, people stop even asking what you want because they assume you'll always adjust to them. The kind person ends up training the world to overlook them. This creates a paradox. The kinder you are, the more invisible you become. And invisibility is not peace. It's loneliness dressed up in politeness. The science and the history. Now, none of this means that kindness is bad. Far from it. Genuine kindness is one of the most beautiful forces in the world. But there's a difference between kindness that flows from abundance and kindness that bleeds from emptiness. One heals, the other corrodes. One comes from love, the other from fear. Let's look at some facts. In a study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, researchers found that people who struggle to say no, often those who identify as kind and agreeable, are significantly more likely to experience burnout. Another study out of the University of Berkeley showed that altruistic behavior increases well-being, but only when it is voluntary and authentic. When kindness is performed out of guilt, obligation, or fear of disappointing others, it has the opposite effect, actually lowering happiness and increasing stress. History shows us this pattern repeatedly. Abraham Lincoln, known for his compassionate nature and tendency to pardon soldiers, suffered from what was called melancholy, what we'd now recognize as clinical depression. He carried the weight of a nation's suffering on his shoulders, and while his empathy made him a great leader, it also tormented him. His law partner described him as the most depressed person I ever saw. And yet so many of us get trapped in this cycle. We don't want to disappoint anyone, so we keep saying yes. We don't want to be perceived as selfish, so we keep giving. We don't want to lose love, so we keep sacrificing. But the cost of this endless kindness is enormous, the monster within. Slowly, you begin to lose sight of yourself. You don't even know what you want anymore because your entire identity has been built around serving others. You become a stranger in your own skin.
And here's where the monster within comes in. Because when you suppress your needs, when you deny your anger, when you bury your boundaries in the name of kindness, those emotions don't disappear. They collect in the shadows, they ferment. And eventually they come out in ways you can't control.
Consider Vincent van Gogh. His letters reveal a man of extraordinary kindness and empathy, constantly trying to please his brother Theo, his fellow artists, and society at large. He gave away his possessions, shared his meager funds, and poured himself into relationships that often went unreciprocated. But that suppressed need for recognition and reciprocal love eventually manifested in his mental breakdowns. The gentle soul who painted sunflowers also cut off his own ear in a moment of psychological collapse.
Maybe it's snapping at someone you love for something small. Maybe it's passive-aggressive comments, resentment that leaks out in subtle ways. Or maybe it's even darker, years of repressed feelings exploding all at once, leaving you shocked at the person you've become.
We like to imagine that kindness protects us from darkness, but in reality, kindness without honesty creates the perfect breeding ground for it. Because every time you say yes, when you mean no, every time you smile when you want to cry, every time you hold back your truth to make someone else comfortable, you are not being kind, you are abandoning yourself. And abandonment always has consequences. Cultural conditioning. Now, let's be real. Why do we do this? Why do kind people struggle so much with boundaries? The answer lies in our culture. From a young age, many of us are conditioned to believe that kindness equals worthiness. That being agreeable is safer than being authentic. That love is earned by what we give, not by who we are. This isn't just a modern problem. Throughout history, entire cultures have weaponized kindness. In feudal Japan, the concept of kiri, obligation and duty, meant that samurai were expected to serve their lords unto death, suppressing all personal desires. In medieval Europe, the Catholic Church promoted extreme self-denial as the path to holiness, leading countless monks and nuns to practices that destroyed their health in the name of spiritual purity. Children who grow up in environments where love is conditional, where affection depends on performance, obedience, or self-sacrifice, often carry this belief into adulthood. They become adults who confuse people-pleasing with kindness. But true kindness does not erase the self. True kindness includes the self. If your kindness is costing you your mental health, your joy, your energy, then it's not kindness anymore. It's self-neglect dressed as virtue.
The neuroscience.
And this is where the science comes in. Neuroscience tells us that the brain has something called the mirror neuron system. It's what allows us to feel empathy. When you see someone in pain, your brain lights up as if you are in pain too. That's why kindness feels so natural to us as humans. We are wired to connect. But here's the catch. Mirror neurons don't distinguish between healthy empathy and destructive empathy. If you constantly expose yourself to others' suffering without any boundaries, your brain essentially floods itself with stress signals. Over time, this leads to chronic stress responses, immune system issues, and emotional exhaustion. In other words, your brain is not built for endless, boundaryless kindness. It's built for balanced connection. Princess Diana exemplified this modern tragedy. Known worldwide for her compassion, hugging AIDS patients when others feared to, comforting the dying, championing the marginalized, she was drowning in her private life. Her bulimia, her depression, her desperate need for love and validation all stemmed from a childhood and marriage where her worth was measured by how well she served others. The people's princess was, in truth, a woman struggling to find herself beneath the weight of everyone else's needs. So the dark side of kindness is not that kindness itself is bad, it's that kindness can be twisted by fear, by conditioning, by culture, by our own unhealed wounds, into something that looks noble on the surface but slowly eats us alive inside. And when that happens, the very thing we thought was our greatest strength becomes the very thing that breaks us. Reflection. Now let's pause and reflect here. If you've ever felt this, the exhaustion, the resentment, the sense of being invisible, even though everyone calls you so kind, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're not defective.
What you're experiencing is the natural consequence of a world that doesn't teach us how to balance giving with protecting ourselves. It's the monster within, not because you're bad, but because unexpressed truths eventually demand to be seen.
And this brings us to the real question. How do we embrace kindness without letting it destroy us? How do we stay compassionate without turning into martyrs? How do we love others without abandoning ourselves? The path forward. So, how do we do it? How do we embrace kindness in a way that heals instead of harms? The answer lies in one simple but deeply uncomfortable truth. Kindness must begin with you. Not in a selfish disregard for others kind of way, but in the sense that if your kindness doesn't include yourself, then it isn't truly kindness at all. It's performance. And performance eventually collapses. Think of it like this. If you've ever flown on an airplane, you know the safety instructions. In an emergency, put your oxygen mask on first before assisting others. At first glance, that advice feels almost wrong, almost unnatural. Why would I not help my child or my loved one first? But the logic is undeniable. If you pass out from lack of oxygen, you can't help anyone. The same principle applies to kindness. If you neglect your own needs, your own rest, your own well-being, your ability to truly care for others eventually suffocates. The power of boundaries. This is where boundaries enter the picture. And boundaries for many kind people feel terrifying. Boundaries feel like rejection. They feel like selfishness. They feel like shutting people out. But in reality, boundaries are the purest form of honesty. A boundary says, this is what I can give and this is what I cannot. It says, my love is real, but it cannot exist if I'm empty. It says, I care enough to show you my limits, because without them, my care will rot into resentment. Eleanor Roosevelt learned this lesson. Early in her marriage to Franklin, she tried to be the perfect, self-sacrificing wife, enduring his infidelities, his domineering mother, and the crushing expectations of political life. But after discovering Franklin's affair, something shifted. She established boundaries. She created her own life, her own career, her own identity. And paradoxically, it was only after she stopped trying to please everyone that she became one of the most influential humanitarians in history. Her kindness became powerful because it came from strength, not depletion. Psychologists describe boundaries as the invisible lines that define where you end and where another person begins. Without those lines, relationships blur into dependency, manipulation, or silent suffering. With them, relationships become clear, mutual, and grounded in respect. In fact, research shows that people who set healthy boundaries often experience deeper, more meaningful relationships because their kindness comes from choice, not compulsion. Practical strategies. So what can you do practically to shift from enslaved kindness to liberated kindness? Here are some strategies, not as quick fixes, but as lifelong practices. First, practice the pause. When someone asks something of you, don't immediately say yes. Take a breath. Give yourself space to check in with your own needs. Ask, do I have the energy for this? Do I want to do this? Is this request aligned with my values? Even a few seconds of reflection can save you from automatic people-pleasing. Second, learn the power of gentle no's. A no doesn't have to be harsh. It can be compassionate and kind. I care about you, but I can't take this on right now. Or, I'd love to help, but I don't have the capacity. The world won't fall apart if you say no. In fact, the more honest you are, the more people will respect your yes. Third, reframe your worth. Your value is not determined by how much you give away. Your value is intrinsic. You existed before anyone needed you, before you learned to perform kindness to survive. You are worthy of love even when you say no, even when you rest, even when you take nothing on your shoulders. Fourth, tend to your own garden. Fill yourself with the things that nourish you, friendships that feed your soul, creative pursuits, moments of stillness. When you live from abundance rather than scarcity, kindness flows naturally. It's not forced. It's not depleting. It becomes a gift rather than a transaction. And fifth, allow yourself to feel the harder emotions, anger, frustration, sadness. These are not enemies of kindness. They are signals. They tell you when your boundaries are being crossed, when your needs are being ignored. If you suppress them, they morph into the monster within. But if you acknowledge them, if you listen, they become guides that point you toward balance. The mask comes off. Let's return to the metaphor of masks. For many people, kindness has become a lifelong mask. The smile you wear to cover the exhaustion, the yes you give to avoid conflict, the generosity you perform to prove your worth. But masks are heavy, and the longer you wear them, the harder it becomes to remember what your own face looks like. The real journey is not to throw away kindness, but to remove the mask and let kindness come from the real you. The you that can say yes and no with equal honesty. The you that is kind without disappearing.
There is an old saying, if you want to know who you truly are, look at how you treat yourself when no one is watching. That's where authentic kindness begins. Not in the approval of others, not in the praise of being the nice one, but in the quiet choices you make for your own well-being.
Do you rest when you're tired? Do you forgive yourself when you fail? Do you speak to yourself with compassion? If not, then your kindness to others is built on a fragile foundation. The final lesson, the irony is this. When you treat yourself with true kindness, your kindness toward others becomes more powerful, not less, because it comes from overflow, not depletion. It inspires rather than exhausts. It invites others to rise with you instead of lean on you endlessly. Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, understood this. While he was endlessly kind and patient on camera, he was also fiercely protective of his own time and energy. He swam every morning, maintained strong boundaries in his personal life, and never let the demands of fame consume him. That's why his kindness lasted decades and touched millions. It came from a well that he carefully tended, not from a reservoir he drained dry.
And maybe that's the final lesson here. The dark side of kindness isn't about rejecting kindness. It's about transforming it from a mask into a mirror, from compulsion into choice, from survival into love.
So the next time someone tells you that you're so kind, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is this kindness coming from fear or from freedom, from exhaustion or from abundance, from the mask or from the real me? The answer to that question will tell you more about yourself than any compliment ever could, because at the end of the day, the monster within kind people is not their anger, not their limits, not their boundaries. The real monster is self-neglect. And once you face it, once you set down the mask, you'll discover that your kindness doesn't disappear. It only grows stronger, sharper, more radiant. It becomes the kind of kindness that doesn't just keep others alive, but keeps you alive too.
And maybe that's the ultimate kindness, to live fully as yourself without erasing, without performing, without apologizing, to show the world that compassion doesn't mean self-erasure, it means truth.
That's the kind of kindness the world needs most, not endless yeses, not silent suffering, but the courage to love without losing yourself. History has taught us this lesson again and again. The question is, will we finally learn it?